今週2021年8月22日コングレスニュースです。コングレス WBN グローバルインテリジェンスユニットからの新しいリリースで地上で深まる危機の本質とその関連性についての視野が提供されています。
Dire warning and a stark reality.
The UN calls it code red for humanity.
It is unequivocal that human activities are responsible for climate change.
And that is according to a devastating report by the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which warns that many human-caused effects are now irreversible.
The extremes we're now experiencing, fires, floods, droughts, and storms, will only intensify.
Experts agree that without big reductions in global carbon dioxide emissions, the world cannot win the fight against climate change.
国際連合は最近3000ページにも上る気象変動についての壊滅的な報告書を提出しました。目印となるこの報告書は200人以上の科学者によるリサーチに基づき国際連合の気候変動に関する政府間パネル IPCC が発行したもので人類へのコードレッドと呼ばれています。今回の特別版コングレスニュースでは国連レポートからのハイライトと惑星全体を握る危機の本質についてグローバルインテリジェンスユニットからの視野をウッドロス氏のエグゼクティブアタッシェのマーロン・ジェームソンから分かち合ってもらいます。
Finding number 1. Humans are to blame.
We want to identify 5 implications or 5 findings of the report that will allow us to continue to track the nature of the crisis that is gripping the earth. The first finding that they made out of the research effort is that it is now very clear that human beings are to blame for global warming. Before, scientists were considering other factors that may be contributing, but what they found is that our way of life is responsible for warming the planet. And this is a quotation that was made by a researcher coming out of the research effort. He says, "It is unequivocal that human influence has warmed the atmosphere, ocean, and land. And simply put, our way of life is destroying the planet."
Finding number 2. Global temperature rise inevitable.
The next finding or next conclusion that they arrived at was that the global rise of temperatures is now inevitable. And what they mean by that is that no matter what action we take now, no matter how drastic the action, global temperatures will continue to rise for some time to come, wreaking severe havoc upon the atmosphere and the ecosystem that we depend on for life. One quotation from the report says, even the severest of cuts of carbon emissions, the waste product produced out of the industrial and manufacturing process, and even the severest of cuts are now unlikely to prevent global warming of 1.5 degrees Celsius above the temperatures recorded before our societies became industrialized. 1.5 degrees Celsius doesn't sound like much, but measured against the impact and the sensitivity of our ecosystem and environment, the impact is going to be absolutely catastrophic and devastating.
Finding number 3. More extreme weather expected.
The other conclusion that they arrive at while looking at the climate is that weather is now going to become more extreme. Here is another quotation. Severe heat waves that happened only once every 50 years are now happening roughly once a decade. Tropical cyclones or hurricanes are getting stronger, and most land areas are seeing more rain or snowfall in 1 year. Severe droughts are happening 1.7 times as often. Just a snapshot of what our daily life is going to become as this crisis deepens. Weather is going to intrude more catastrophically on our day-to-day operations.
Finding number 4. Accelerated polar ice melt.
The other finding that they made was that the Arctic ice sheets are now melting faster than ever. They are at the lowest levels they've ever been in 1,000 years. And this melting of the ice sheets, it creates a feedback loop that contributes to the global warming phenomenon. This is another quote from the report. It creates a feedback loop with reflective ice giving way to darker water that absorbs solar radiation, causing even more warming. So ice sheets, they acted to reflect solar radiation away from the Earth. But with the disappearing of the ice, that solar radiation is now being absorbed by darker waters and is actually contributing to the warming of the planet.
Finding number 5. Rising sea levels.
The other finding that came out of the report was that sea levels will now continue to rise no matter what humanity does. Sea level has picked up speed. Things are accelerating in terms of the rising sea levels as the ice sheets continue to melt and as the ocean waters continue to warm. And even if global warming were halted at 1.5 degrees Celsius, that figure, that is the figure of absolute devastation, the average sea level would still rise about 2 to 3 meters or 6 to 10 feet and maybe more. No matter what we do, the seas will now continue to rise. Looking at these findings, you get the sense that the Earth has crossed over a line, a point of no return, that things are going to get worse no matter what we do. Key environmental systems are failing with unprecedented effects. A few weeks ago, an article came out published by Scientific Research, and it talked about the collapsing jet streams and Gulf streams. Jet streams and Gulf streams are fast-moving currents of air and water that act to stabilize both the weather and also the life in the ocean. And those streams are weakening and falling apart. And what that will do, it will allow chaotic processes to begin to unfold, both in terms of weather and also in terms of the stability of the ecological systems that we depend on. And then we have the phenomenon of global wildfires. It seems like the entire planet is on fire. Everything is burning. We have massive fires in the United States. We have heard about the Dixie fire up in California, and also the bootleg fire in Oregon, consuming large swaths of land, hundreds of thousands of acres of land at one time. But not only in the United States, but Greece is on fire, Turkey is on fire, Italy is on fire, even Siberia is on fire. Global fires, wildfires are now destroying large quantities of land and adding to the problem of the warming of the planet.
悪化する地球温暖化、加速する氷河の融解と海面上昇、海洋生態系の崩壊、激化する嵐や壊滅的な山火事など、気象変動に関する問題は後戻りできないところまで地球を押してしまいました。
The word being used by the wise men of Babylon is apocalyptic. Everyone is aware that something is going catastrophically wrong, but no one has the answers. When you put all of these things together, looking at the response of the nations, in other words, the world is now locked into an inevitable steep downward decline into environmental collapse, and things are spiraling out of control. And that's the issue of climate change. The God of our journey protects us. He will provide a barrier between that which is darkening the earth, and He will provide light to us as we continue to follow His guidelines and instruction as we follow Him down towards the end of time. And we are depending upon a God sovereign over all things to continue to take all eventualities coming upon the earth. Therefore, as the earth gets dark, our hearts are filled with joy. We continue to track God within our congress, even as we continue to track Him in the midst of the crisis unfolding across the earth.
来週も引き続き CWBN グローバルインテリジェンスユニットからの特別レポートとして、国際連合による気候変動に関する政府間パネルと地上で解き明かされる神の目的について見ていきます。それでは今週の言葉、神の言葉の構造とその中身が私たちを時の終わりへと推し進める滑走路です。今週2021年8月22日のコングレスニュースは以上となります。